Om. Om Sahana Bhavatu Sahanau Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karavavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu ma vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Sadashiva Samarambham Shankaracharya Madhyamam Asmadacharya Paryantam Vande Guru Paramparam. Ramo Rajamani Sada Vijayate Ramam Ramesham Bhaje Ramena Bihata Nisha Charachamu Ramaya Tasmai Namaha. Ramanasti Parayanam Parataram Ramasya Dasosmyaham. Rame Chittalaya Sada Bhavatu Me Bho Rama Mamuddhara Samasta Janakalyane Niratam Karunamayam Namami Chinmayam Devam Satgurum Brahma Vidwaram Satgurum Brahma Vidwaram. Om Apyayantu Mamangani Vak Pranaschakshushrotramatho Balamindriyani Cha Sarvani Sarvam Brahma Upanishadam Maham Brahma Nirakuryam Ma Brahma Nirakarot Anirakaranamastvanirakaranam me astu Tadatmani nirateya upanishatsu dharmaha te mayi santu. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om. In this entire Bhashya of Ishwara Siddhi Parkarnam, there are two main points which are highlighted or which Bhagavan wants to emphasize. One part is to make our life blessed by appreciating the presence of the Lord. Ishwaraha Asti. For this, Bhagavan gave lot of yukti. He explained how karma phala works, how there is something called as kalantara karma, that once an action is done, that action is over. He doesn't know how to decide which result should come at what time. So another sentient entity is needed which can give us these karma phalas. He says that is our Bhagavan. And then he quoted other Upanishad mantras, whatever is said in Upanishads about Ishvara. Having said all of that, the Purva Pakshi said, I agree that there is Ishvara, but if you take Bhagavan to be different from yourself, then you'll end up with a regression. That there will be another Ishvara who is needed above that Ishvara. Another Ishvara who is even above that Ishvara. This is something like Devata and Ishvara. How we have this hierarchy. Devatas actually are Jivas who have done some Vishesha karma, and they have certain abilities which are very different than ordinary Jivas. So Agni Devata has the power to bless, Indra Bhagwan has the power to bless, and so on. But all of them fall under the category of Jivas. So we say there is Ishvara who is greater than Devatas. So the Purva Pakshi asked, if you say Ishvara is somebody different from you, and he is of this nature, different from you, independent, then he'll have somebody else who is even greater than that Ishvara. So this is where Bhagavan, in a very subtle way, he brought us back to Advaita Vedanta. He said, essential nature of Ishvara is Shuddha Chaitanya. So although we say there is karma phaladata who is needed, who is separate from this Jiva. We are not interested in saying Jiva is different from Ishwara. Essential form of Ishwara is Shuddha Chaitanya. Therefore, there is no flaw in our thinking. This is the background. Then another Purva Pakshi came. Another Purva Pakshi came. He said, if you say Jiva is one with Ishwara, or what is the statement he made? Ishwara is the Atma of Jiva. Ishwara is Atma of Jiva. He said, how can this be true? There are so many differences, so many Bhedas are there. And he pointed out 6 Bhedas. So what was his Pratijna finally? Ishwara is different from Jiva. What is the Hetu? Lakshana Bhedat. Lakshana Bhedat. There is difference in indicators. Drishtanta was Ashwa Mahishayoho. Just like a cow and a horse, they have different indicators, so they are different. Indicators of Jiva is different, indicator of Ishwara is different. You remember or not the 6 different things we had seen, how karma of Ishwara is different, karma of Jiva is different. Now Bhagavan is again bringing him to the point of precisely defining Jivatva. He says, before you concluded Jiva is different from Ishwara, he says, first try to define what is a Jiva, according to you. And Bhagavan gives 3 options of Jiva himself. Bhagavan only gives us 3 options. He says, what is your first option? You can say Jiva is reflection. There is pure consciousness. Jiva is reflection of that consciousness. Pratibimbavada. Manisha Panchakam, this is how it will start. More details about each one we'll get to see there. But over here, we can just appreciate which Vada he is talking about. Reflection is Jiva. Second, he says you can take Jiva as conditioned consciousness. There is pure consciousness and the conditioning which conditions that consciousness, that together is called as Jiva. So the space, infinite space which is there, that is like Shuddha Chaitanya. Conditioning is the pot. Pot space is called as similar to Jiva. So here Purva Pakshi says our body, that is like this pot. That is like this conditioning. And consciousness conditioned by body, he says that is Jiva. Second definition. Third one, he says, is Shuddha Chaitanya. Because we saw in Drigdrisha Viveka, 5 aspects were pointed out of Jiva, and pure consciousness was also one of it, Sakshi. So he says, what is your definition of Jiva? Is it reflection? Is it conditioned consciousness? Or is it pure consciousness? If you take the first 2, then you will end up with Siddhasadhanata Dosha. Siddhasadhanata means we are establishing something that we already know. Like dream is unreal. If somebody uses a lot of logic to establish, that will be called as Siddhasadhanata Dosha. So he says, we also know that with conditioning, Jiva is bound. With conditioning, there is samsara. If you let go of conditioning, there is moksha. So basically, when you say Jiva is different from Ishwara, what you are really holding on to is Jivatva. What you are really holding on to is this ahankara. That is what Vedanta wants to remove. Holding on to means what? He is not intentionally holding on to. This mix-up is so thick, very hard to think of ourselves, devoid of physical body, devoid of mind. In Vedanta, there must be probably 100 plus Prakarana Granthas. Minimum, 100 plus. Bhagavan Shankracharya and several other acharyas, they have written. Majority of discussion is about Tvam Pada Viveka. Even Vivek Chudamani, if you see, 500 plus verses, main topic emphasized is how Atma is different from Anatma. Have you seen any text which discusses about adhyasa in Tatpada? Pure consciousness and samashti sthula, samashti sukshma, samashti karana upadhi, how mix-up takes place and how we should eliminate this mix-up, how we should do viveka. You will not find. Because the moment mix-up is understood over here, and we let go of this mix-up in aham, that mix-up is already resolved, automatically resolved. Because Tatpada, Bhagavan says, I never took up upadhis to begin with. Several times he says this in Bhagavad Gita. I am always in my Shuddha Chaitanya. Upadhis were appearing because of Jiva taking up upadhis. Karma Phaladata is from Karta standpoint. Antaryami is from Antahkarana Abhimani standpoint. So that is the sequential method of inquiry. Okay, so the first two Bhagavan said they are Siddhasadhanata Dosha, and the third one was if you take Jiva to be pure consciousness. He says there is Ashrayasidhhi Dosha. Means there is no Jivatva to begin with. How are you going to prove the difference between Jiva and Ishwara? What was the example for Ashrayasidhhi? Sky flower is fragrant. Sky flower is fragrant. No matter how much logic you use to prove that, if you don't have sky flower in the first place, what is the point of going further? So here he says, when you understand nature of Jiva as consciousness, there is no Lakshana to begin with. Lakshana Bheda, he said. Because there is difference in Lakshana, there is difference in Jiva and Ishvara. He said there is no Lakshana to begin with. It is Ashrayasidhhi Dosha. Okay, I just summarized what we had done in the last session. Now this Bhashya is very important because although Bhagavan is defining Jivatva according to Purva Pakshi, but we can learn a lot about Jivatva and try to eliminate it in Nididhyasanam. So first he says Bahyaha. Bahya means Jivaha. Antaratma, this consciousness is innermost. Whatever is outside, starting from Ahankara, he says that falls under Jiva. Bahyaha. Generally, Bahya, what we feel is outside physical body. And inside we feel is inside physical body. So in Vedanta, the line of inside and outside is drawn at consciousness. Whatever is on this side, he said that is Chaitanya. Whatever is outside of consciousness is Bahya. So thought according to Shuddha Vedantin is Mahabahya. Because the first Bahya Vastu is Ahankara. Then comes Vritti. In Panchakosha Viveka also, which kosha comes first? Manomaya kosha or Vijnanamaya kosha? When you are going from Annamaya. What is the first kosha? Annamaya. Then comes Pranamaya. Then comes Manomaya. After that comes Vijnanamaya. So Vijnanamaya is Ahankara. Manomaya is thoughts. And we are trying to go inwards. So which is innermost? We say Ahankara is innermost or inner compared to thoughts. Compared to Ahankara, Avidya, from which Ahankara rises, that is even interior. That is called as Anandamaya Kosha. Compared to Anandamaya, it says Brahma is Pratyak. It is the most inner thing. That is how it is given in Panchakosha Viveka. Chakshu Buddhi Adi Samahara Santana. Samahara means, Santana means it has been flowing for a long time. We keep changing physical bodies, we keep modifying minds. And the moment somebody identifies with it, he gets the title of Jiva. And Bhagavan said this is Viparita Pratyaya. The same conditioning I call as mine, but same conditioning I end up calling as I. ahankara mamatvadi viparita pratyaya. Look at the irony. My body and I am the body. I am the body, we take up dharma of the body. We generally don't say I am the body, we say I am tall. I am short. So dharma belongs to sharira, which I call as mine. I say this is my body. But the attributes of that body, that is taken as I. Same thing with mind also. We use the term my mind. My mind. But attributes of mind, we call it as I. My mind, but I am angry. My mind, but I am happy. Okay. So he says this is viparita pratyaya, and this will not go on its own. Why? Because it has been very well connected for a long time. Prabandha avicheda lakshanaha. Even if we change sharira or paristhiti or even manasthiti, he says even in the most sattvic mind, this knowledge will not come without pramana. And nitya shuddha buddha mukta swarupa vijnanatma ishvara garbha. Time and again, Bhagavan uses the opportunity to go back to this fact that Ishvara is not paroksha. Bhagavan is pratyak. He is antaratma. If you search in the mind, if you search the witness of the mind, he says you will find Ishvara. Because these indicators we use for Sakshi also. Right? Nitya Shuddha, Buddha, Mukta Swarupa. Vijnanatma. It is self-shining. But next word is important. Ishvara Garbha. One way of finding Bhagavan is making him as object of thought. For gopis also, this indicator is used. They say if you search the mind of gopis, you will not find world. You will find Bhagavan. Means what? Every vritti has become Bhagavad-akara vritti. Every thought is thinking about the Lord. To that devotee, Bhagavan blesses knowledge. Bhagavan blesses with knowledge, and he says, understand me as substratum of the thought. So vritti vishaya is also Bhagavan. Vritti adhisthana is also Bhagavan. Adhisthana means substratum or support. These are two facets. One is the devotional facet, another is the Vedantic facet. Chitta chaitya bija, biji swabhavaha. Chitta means all the different perceptions which are taking place. Chaitya means sukha dukha, joy and sorrow. Bija was avidya, ignorance. And biji is sharira. Now these words are such, we will not appreciate without the precise translations. They all mean the same if you just look at it superficially. All of them are expressions of consciousness. But there is a precision. What happens is, when we pay attention to every word, this study itself becomes nididhyasanam. Study itself becomes nididhyasanam. You might have noticed studying with Bhashya accomplishes this for us. What the Moola Mantra could not have made us think about, that Bhashya forces us to think about. Kalpitaha means it is projected. What is projected? Bahyaha. That's why the color is same over here. Bahyaha kalpitaha anitya vijnana ishvara lakshanaha viparitaha abhyupagamyate. Only when you include all this kalpita vastu, superimposed things, you end up with definition 1 of Jiva, which is called as Pratibimbavada. That consciousness which is conditioned by, that consciousness which is reflected in these conditionings. What are these conditionings? All of that Bhagavan has mentioned. Buddhi, ahankara, mamatvadi, all of them. Now these indicators, the English ones on the left, I don't expect you to write it because I put this slide anyway. So you can just note down the main ones which are not covered on this slide. So you don't end up writing the same things which are here. Okay, so if I go fast in changing the slides, that is the reason. It is just later when we look back, instead of just seeing the Sanskritam part, we at least have a few indicators we can hold on to. Okay, now Bhagavan says this is Siddhasadhanata Dosha. We already know that if you are sitting in conditionings, identify with conditionings, there is samsara. Yasya avichhede samsara vyavahara. If one does not dissociate with conditionings, there is samsara. Vichhede cha moksha vyavahara. Once you dissociate, there is moksha. So what have you proven? You went to prove Jiva is different from Ishwara. What you ended up proving is Jivatva is Satyam. Jivatva is Satyam. That is not what you want. Right? We don't say Jivatva is Satyam. We say if one identifies with conditionings, then that is called as Jivatva. This we also know, that is called as Siddhasadhanata Dosha. Now the second and third meaning. What was the second meaning of Jiva? Conditioned consciousness, avachedavada. And third one was pure consciousness. So let us read this part. Anyascha mrut pralepavate pratyaksha pradvamsah deva pitru manushyadi lakshanah bhuta vishesha samaharah na punah chaturthah anyah bhinna lakshanah ishwarat abhyupagamyate buddhyadi kalpita atmavyatireka abhiprayena tu lakshana bhedat iti Ashrayasidho hetuhu Ishwarat anyasya atmanah asatvat anyascha. The second definition that you gave, Bhagavan gives a very interesting analogy for body. He says, what is this body? Just like you have a house and you put mud on the house, like a layer. Like that, this body is like a laper on consciousness. Mrut pralepavat. Lepa means a layer. Mrut is mud. How you put a layer of mud over a house. He says like that, this body is a layer on consciousness. Pratyaksha pradvamsaha. We are seeing it perish every moment. Even with our pratyaksha, we can know it. Right? 7 years, all body cells changed. What we were so many years before. Why so many years? Just few years before. And what we are now, so much of difference. Deva Pitru Manushyadi. Either it is Deva Sharira, Pitru Sharira, or Manushya Sharira. Lakshanaha. Bhuta Visheshaha Samaharaha. What is formed by all these 5 elements coming together, that entity, conditioned consciousness, is called as Jiva. He's taking different ideas which can be there in a person. He says, whenever I think of Jiva, this ahankara, mind, these things don't come to me at all. The only conditioning which comes to me is physical body. He says, okay, definition 2 is that. I dedicate one whole definition for Sthula Sharira. Consciousness conditioned by Sharira, he says that is Jiva. So here also, Bhagavan says there is Siddhasadhanata Dosha. Means we know that body is perishing. If one identifies with perishing body, that is called as samsara. And assuming that to be real, he says you are establishing the fact that Jiva is different from Ishvara. You are establishing the fact Jiva is different from Ishvara by taking Sharira to be real, then identifying with that Sharira, and then defining Jiva to be consciousness conditioned by that Sharira. He said that we also say, if you identify with Jiva, there is samsara. If you identify with Sharira, there is samsara. Dissociate with Sharira means remove Deha Abhimana. He said that is moksha. So what new thing you have proven over here? Then he says the third definition. Third definition was pure consciousness. Na punaha chaturthaha. It should be tritiyaha, right? He's saying chaturthaha over here. And chaturtha means turiyaha. That which is the substratum of three avasthas. So is it first avastha, Jagrat avastha? He says no. Is it Swapna avastha? No. Is it third avastha? No. Is it fourth one different from the three? He says no. So that substratum of the three avasthas, that is called as Jiva. So in any Upanishad, whenever three avasthas are pointed out, if we have studied Vedanta Sara, we should remember that that is Adhyaropa. Whenever Jagrat avastha is pointed out and consciousness is pointed out, Swapna avastha is pointed out, through that it is said consciousness is something which moves across Jagrat, Swapna and Sushupti. Like that fish which moves across the three banks. So one bank is Jagrat, another is Swapna, third is Sushupti. It is not really to say that there is Chaitanya which is going through all these three avasthas. That is Adhyaropa, where attention is shifted to Chaitanya. Then it is said that Chaitanya is devoid of all avasthas. All avasthas are mithya. That is the main teaching. He says, na punaha chaturtaha anyaha bhinna lakshana ishvarat abhyupagamyate. If you take definition of Jiva as Turiya, which is Shuddha Chaitanya, you will not find any lakshanas to establish your pratijna. Jivatva itself is asiddha. How are you going to establish Jiva Ishvara Bheda? Asiddha means not established. So it is like establishing sky flower is fragrant. If you say Jivatva is real and say there is Bheda between Jiva and Ishvara. Okay. Buddhyadi kalpita atma vyatireka abhiprayena tu lakshana bhedatiti Ashrayasidhhi hetuhu. Only if you have this kalpita bheda included, then you will end up with all problems. Then you will end up with Jiva Ishvara bheda. Ishwarat anyasya atmanah asatvat. To find another Ishvara different from this Jiva, different from Shuddha Chaitanya. He says such thing is not possible. Asatvat. There is no separate Ishvara different from Sakshi, different from Atma. Okay, so this topic is concluded now. Three definitions of Jiva and how, without giving reality to Jivatva, this Bheda cannot be established. So if somebody insists on Jiva Ishvara Bheda, what they are really ending up with is Jivatva. All right. Now the student has a very unique challenge. Okay, he's a sincere student, Astika. Does his sadhanas, everything he does. He's having challenge in accepting his essential nature as Ishvara. Essential nature as Ishvara, he says, I cannot confidently accept this. Why is that? See, whenever such topics are repeated, what it means is, in spite of studying for several years, it is hard nut to crack. Bhagavan says this in different places. He says, Durvid Neyartham. Don't feel that this topic is getting repeated. The purpose is to break Jivatva in us. So he's pointing out in different ways. Same thing he's pointing out. What he's showing in a different perspective. So he says the student is having difficulty in accepting his essential nature as Ishvara. One problem could be if he does not appreciate Ishvara as Shuddha Chaitanya. If that point has not become clear yet, then he'll not be able to appreciate the statement, essential nature of Jiva is Ishvara. Some conditioning will be there, something will be included. That can be the first obstacle. What are some other obstacles? One is, he sees Jeeva Dharma in himself. Time and again he feels, I'm getting disappointed. I am sorrowful, I am happy. So this Jiva Dharma he sees in Aham. On the other hand, he knows Ishvara as Ananda Swarupa. Whatever is his idea of Ishvara, at least this much we know, that Bhagavan is not somebody who becomes Sukhi Dukhi like a Jiva. Bhagavan is always Nitya Ananda Swarupa. Now when Upanishad comes and says, your essential nature is Ishvara. He says, I see Sukha Dukha in myself. Won't this Sukha Dukha get superimposed on Bhagavan? Won't this Sukha Dukha get superimposed on Ishvara? Bhagavan purposely uses the word Ishvara because he wants us to break this notion that Ishvara is Paroksha. Ishvara is Shuddha Chaitanya. See, if we say this statement as, if Ishvara is Atma of Jiva, won't attributes of Jiva affect consciousness? We say, that is okay. And we have seen this also, how consciousness cannot be affected by thoughts. Now Bhagavan is using the word, Ishvara is not affected by thoughts. Ishvara is not affected by Sukha Dukha. So he's establishing two things over here, accomplishing two things over here. One is, he is emphasizing this point that Bhagavan is Shuddha Chaitanya, essential nature of Bhagavan is Shuddha Chaitanya. And he says that Chaitanya is not different from you. So Mahavakya is also accomplished. At the same time, this notion that Ishvara is always with Upadhi, that notion is also getting challenged. So here he says, if Ishvara is Atma of Jiva, won't attributes of Jiva affect Ishvara? Means Ishvara also will become Sukhi and Dukhi. If he is Atma of Jiva, he says Jiva becomes Sukhi and Dukhi. Don't say Jiva becomes. You say I become Sukhi and Dukhi. If you say Ishvara is my Atma, then how come Ishvara will not become Sukhi and Dukhi? Even he will become Sukhi Dukhi. And I know that Ishvara is Ananda Swarupa. He says, okay, what are the options you have now? He says, option one is keep Ishvara different from Jiva. If this is the problem we are ending up with, he says, let Jiva Dharma be there in Jiva, let Ishvara be Nitya Mukta, Ishvara be Ananda Swarupa. Simple, right? Problem solved. Who is saying this? Student is saying, But Bhagavan says there is second option also. What is the second option? Question whether attributes of Jiva can really affect Ishvara, in spite of them appearing. In spite of Sukha Dukha appearing, question whether that Sukha Dukha can really affect Ishvara. And again, Ishvara here is Shuddha Chaitanya. It says if you establish that Sukha Dukha, in spite of their appearance, they cannot be present in Ishvara, your problem is solved. So you can still abide in Mahavakya, still abide in nature of consciousness. and not worry about which thought is appearing in front of this consciousness. That is the main message here. He says, don't go with option one. After so much of sadhana, so many janmas, we have come to Mahavakya. To appreciate this oneness, don't let go of that Mahavakya. But at the same time, if you are having difficulty in understanding this oneness, you think Ishwara is Ananda Swarupa, and if he is Atma of Jiva, my Sukha Dukha, which is in Jiva, it will go to Ishwara. He says, no, the whole point is to shift this I from Jiva to Chaitanya. That Chaitanya is devoid of Sukha Dukha. Even if it appears, it is not affected by it. Okay? He says, stick with second option. Now, Bhagavan, to establish this point, that how superimposition is happening, he gives two beautiful examples. Let's see the examples first, then we'll go to Bhashya. What is the point he's saying now? Even if Jeeva Dharma appears, it does not affect the substratum Ishvara, which is Shuddha Chaitanya. So, example he gives is of sun. When it is dark, different objects are not available to us. If you go to Krishnalaya, it is pitch dark. If you just walk away, you really see nothing over there. Then when the sun rises, all objects are manifested. They are available to us. Then again they become unmanifest. There is night. Now object manifesting and unmanifesting. Who is responsible? Sun. Only when sun is there, object was available to me. Sun is not there, object is not available to me. But with this, we make some statements. Sun has risen today. Or sun has set now. Now you see the statement. From the standpoint of sun, there is no rising, there is no setting. But because it becomes an instrument for our transactions over here, because objects become available in the presence of sun, there is light in the presence of sun, we superimpose doership on the sun. This is just in the same way, consciousness becomes the prompter. It enlivens the mind, it enlivens thoughts. But due to ignorance, we end up superimposing thoughts onto consciousness. That is the main point here. Because something is an enlivener, superimposition happens on that entity. If it was completely different, we would never have superimposed thing on that. But it is involved in this transaction in the way that it is prompting it. It is the enlivener of it. Because of that, we end up superimposing. He says we make another statement. Sun brings about day and night. These are all said in Bhashya. I'm just translating in English. It becomes easier. Sun brings about day and night. You see, really speaking, sun has nothing to do with day and night. But you see how doership is getting superimposed on the sun. Because it is enlivener. This is in the same way. Thoughts which are there are getting their existence from consciousness. They are enlivened by consciousness. But if you are not alert, then that doership, Sukha Dukha, everything will go to consciousness. Because it enlivens it, it ends up getting superimposed. Now, meditation pointer here is, whenever I think of I, do I think of this I as somebody who is Sukhi Dukhi? Or do I think of Aham as illuminator of Sukham and Dukham? The whole purpose of Vedanta is to go to the later one. That in Aham, Sukha Dukha, even if it appears, it is only an projection. It's not an absolute entity. Second example he gives is a cloud covering the sun. The person makes a statement, the cloud has covered the sun. And he also says, the sun is not shining here today. Sun is not shining here right now. Now Bhagavan says, look at this statement carefully. Although it is not shining here, it is shining very well elsewhere. Meaning what? Not to shine or darkness is not essential nature of sun. It is because of this conditioning of the cloud and ignorance of the person seeing it in that way. We have superimposed darkness on sun. This is in the same way. Bhagavan uses a beautiful word. He says, Vritti akula bhrantya. Vritti akula means what? Person who is overwhelmed by flurry of thoughts. Akula means that. Different thoughts are rising. Different thoughts are going away. He gets so overwhelmed by them that he starts feeling, I myself am this way. I as in Shuddha Chaitanya is as though not available to me. Right? When we are angry, somebody tells us, you are not angry, you are illuminator of anger thought. It doesn't work. It is just like this person who says, sun is not available to me. He says, like these thoughts have come and they have clouded our thinking. But one thing to appreciate there is, before we can directly see the substratum of thought, one has to do a lot of sadhana to reduce the flurry of thought. In particular, Bhagavan gives this sadhana for a meditator. If mind is racing, that person cannot do Vedantic meditation. Other types of meditation are possible. In fact, Ramana Maharshi said, focusing on the breath is to calm down the mind. But that is not Vedantic meditation. This is qualification for Vedantic meditation is a mind which has fewer number of thoughts. And what is the sadhana? Bhagavan gives in 6th chapter. There is one word, samabuddhir vishishyate. Samabuddhi means one who is equanimous in mind, one who is composed. He says that person is able to accomplish such a personality only if he is least concerned about who is doing what. Bhagavan writes in Bhashya, Kah kim karma iti avyapruta chetaha. Kah kim karma, who is doing what? He says, I am a spiritual seeker. If it is not my dharma, I am least interested because that will bring all other kinds of vrittis. With that, there is some hope to remove this cloud and to appreciate the substratum, which is Chaitanya. Otherwise, sadhaka's struggle is that. On one hand, Vedanta keeps saying, you are not the thought, you are illuminator of thought. What he is concerned is, how can I handle this thought? How can I handle this flurry of thought? So main instruction there is, focus on Nitya Karma, focus on Dharma. Those have never bothered us actually. Those will actually contribute to our sadhana chatushtaya. What is bothering is the other part, which is not our dharma. He says, there you be, kah kim karma iti avyapruta chetaha. This is that verse, Suhrun mitra yudasina madhyastha dvesha bandhushu sadhushvapicha papeshu samabuddhir vishishyate. In his vyavahara, he meets different types of people. Some are friendly, some are indifferent, some are udasina. All people, how is this what is his perspective? How does he interact with them? He says, samabuddhihi vishishyate. His excellence is in his samatha. And how did this samatha come? Bhagavan writes that one line. All these people, what they are doing, kah kim karma iti avyapruta chetaha. Does not overanalyze anything in this world. Then he says, just like darkness is not inherent nature of the sun, Sukham and Dukham, all other functions of intellect which are there, they are really not in Chaitanya. That was a question he had, right? If Ishvara is the Atma of Jiva, then Sukha Dukha, which is Lakshana of Jiva, that will come in Ishvara. And I know that Ishvara is Ananda Swarupa. So Bhagavan says, don't worry. It is only due to superimposition we attribute Jeeva Dharma to Ishvara. And again, Ishvara here is Shuddha Chaitanya. Okay, now Bhashya, we'll see. Ishvarasya eva viruddha lakshanatvam ayuktam iti chet sukha dukkhadi yogascha na nimittatve sati loka viparyaya adhyaropanat savitruvate yathahi savita nitya prakasha rupatvat loka abhivyakti anabhivyakti nimittatve sati loka drishti viparyayena udayastamaya ahoratradi kartrutva adhyaropabhag bhavati. Ishvarasya eva viruddha lakshanatvam ayuktam iti chet sukha dukkhadi yogascha. Because there is sukha dukha which can appear in Jiva, if you say that Jiva is different from Ishvara, he said this is not appropriate. Nimittatve sati loka viparyaya adhyaropanat. Because Ishvara becomes Nimitta. Nimitta means, it's very hard to translate Nimitta in English. How will you say? Prompter, incidental cause, all are compromised translation. Nimitta is that without which a thing cannot happen. Nimitta is that without which a thing cannot happen. So this is the function of the mind, function of intellect. All conditionings, they cannot happen without Chaitanya. Because it is Nimitta in this way, the activities of conditioning, activities of the mind, they get superimposed on Chaitanya. Nimittatve sati, because it is Nimitta, loka viparyaya adhyaropanat. People end up superimposing different things on Chaitanya. Viparyaya here means bhranti. Because of delusion, they end up superimposing on Chaitanya. Means once this person has understood Mahavakya, Tattvamasi Mahavakya, if it has worked, again he should not end up feeling, I am Sukhi Dukhi. Even if it appears, it should fall under Viparita Bhavana category. Not Samshaya category, not Asambhavana category. This difference is clear, right? Viparit Bhavana means what? I have understood that I am not Ahankara, I am Chaitanya. But still if we start feeling, I get happy, I am sad, that is called as Viparit Bhavana. Means I have knowledge, but at the same time my older notions are still overpowering. That is okay. How it is okay? Because through Nididhyasanam, through repeated Vedantic meditation, that can be resolved. But one should not have a doubt. How come I am consciousness also and I feel I am Sukhi Dukhi also? So that is being addressed over here. Only due to Bhranti, there is this superimposition happening. How? Example is given. Yathahi Savita Nitya Prakasha Rupatvat. Sun which is ever shining, Nitya Prakasha Rupa, Loka Abhivyakti Anabhivyakti Nimittatve Sati. Means sun becomes the nimitta for manifesting things in this world and unmanifesting things in this world. When sun is there, I can see objects. Sun is not there, objects are not seen. When this happens, doership is superimposed on the sun. Because it becomes nimitta, there is doership which is getting superimposed on the sun. This is loka drushti viparyayena. From the people's standpoint, due to ignorance, what are they saying? Udayastamaya ahoratradi kartrutva adhyaropa bhag bhavati. That sun becomes the subject of superimposition, where doership of sunrise and sunset. Udayasta means sunrise and sunset. And ahoratradi kartrutva. What was the statement there? Sun brought about day, sun brought about night. This example is very subtle, and it's very precise also. Without doing anything, doership is getting superimposed there. And what is the reason? He says nimitta. In the presence of sun alone, everything happens. He says because of that, superimposition is happening. Then he says, in the same way, evam ishware nitya vijnana shakti rupe. Just like it happened in the case of sun, in the case of Ishwara also. You see, again, he's using the word Ishwara. In the case of Chaitanya, nitya vijnana, it is always of the nature of knowledge. And shakti rupe. Shakti word here does not mean energy. Like how we say Shakti and Shaktiman. It is not that Chaitanya is Shaktiman or Atma is Shaktiman. It has the Shakti of illumining. The only shortcoming there, the only flaw there is if you say Ishwara is Shaktiman, that Shakti can go up and down also. At some point, that Shakti will be very bright. Some point, Shakti will be not so bright. So that never happens in consciousness. It does not happen in Chaitanya. So here, Shakti is said only from the standpoint of the function that is happening. Sense organs are getting illumined. Mind is getting illumined. So who is illumining it? That Chaitanya Shakti is illumining it. We had seen the example of fire also. From the standpoint of the firewood that is getting burnt, we say Agni has Dahaka Shakti. The Shakti to burn. But you ask the fire, do you have Shakti to burn? Fire says that is my Swarupa. It's only from conditioning standpoint, this attribute is put on that fire. In the same way, from all the other Upadhi standpoint, this title of Shakti is given to Ishvara. Loka Vijnana Apoha Sukha Dukha Smrityadi Nimittatve Sati Loka Viparita Buddhya Adhyaropitam. All these functions of the intellect, what is that? Loka Jnana. Different things that we have memorized. All those things which you have understood. What prompted this understanding? That same Chaitanya. In the light of that Chaitanya only, we were able to understand everything. Another next part is interesting. Apoha. We forget those things. Apoha means to forget. You say, what prompted the forgetting? The same Chaitanya. Loka Jnana means to know. Apoha means to forget. Sukha Dukha Smriti Adi. Different thoughts are coming in the mind. Joy is there, sorrow is there, recollection is there of other experiences. All of that, Nimitta is Chaitanya. Ishware Nimittatve Sati. In that Ishvara which becomes Nimitta for all these functionings, Loka Viparita Buddhya Adhyaropitam. But because of ignorance, Viparita Buddhi, these thoughts which are there, they get superimposed on Chaitanya. Sukha Dukha is in Buddhi. Chaitanya enliven Sukha Dukha, but really speaking, that Sukha Dukha gets superimposed on Chaitanya due to ignorance. Viparita lakshanatvam Sukha Dukkadayascha na swataha. By oneself, on its own, Ishwara is not Sukhi, Ishwara is not Dukhi. If the same Lakshana we can say for Aham and say, I am not Sukhi, I am not Dukhi, that is indication of Mahavakya working for us. I am not Dukhi, we can understand. Vedanta wants to say, I am not Dukhi, I am not sorrowful. But Vedanta also wants to say, I am not Sukhi. So I am happy is actually a compromise statement in Vedanta. Why? Because happy is a thought. Vedanta wants to say you are happiness. In our Arati, Om Jai Jagdisha Hare, there is one line which comes. Deena bandhu dukha harata, tumarakshaka mere. Now sometimes while chanting, in one place I heard, Deena bandhu sukha harata, tumarakshaka mere. And suddenly everybody was, taken aback. It was a slip of tongue. They said, Deena bandhu sukha harata. But if you read this Bhashya, that statement is true. Deena bandhu sukha harata. Bhagwan is somebody who will take away this notion that you are not experiencer. Not experiencer of dukkham, that we can understand. But also not experiencer of sukham. So that is this Deena bandhu sukha harata. Of course, other examples we have seen. Puja Gurudev would give electricity example. Right? Same electricity you have, one device giving heat, another device cooling it down. Unless there is superimposition, there is no heat, there is no coolness in that electricity. In the same way, in consciousness, there is no sukham, there is no dukkham also. Okay. Om Purnamadah Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Hari Om. Last time there was a request if I can give some reflection questions after. So I have put it on this slide. I'll upload it also on this slide. If you are doing reflection after on your own or either with a group, it will be helpful. That way we keep track of what are the thoughts we are discussing. Let me just show it here. So just from the main point that we saw it, what is the definition of Jiva, Pardruk, Drishya, Viveka? The indicators of Jiva which are mentioned, definition 1. And you'll notice just going over it again. What are those definitions? That will help us a lot. We used to do the study group here, right? We used to just recap the whole thing. Not that you're coming with some other mananam on top of it. That is the second or third time when we study, we'll be able to reflect on top of what is already said and cross-connect and everything. But now our goal is just to appreciate what Bhagavan is saying and to internalize it. The two examples of doership, how superimposition is taking place, that we can think about. And also, why is it important to know our nature as happiness? Isn't it not sufficient if we can just be happy? I am happy is also a great accomplishment, right? Why do we need to go to the next step of I am happiness? We saw the word vritti akula bhrantya, one who is bothered by flurry of thoughts, superimposes the functions of thought onto consciousness. The question is, can mere study of Vedanta help in reducing flurry of thoughts? If I keep studying several texts, will that study by itself reduce or quieten down the mind? Both paksha you can take. The point is not to find the right answer. Point is to think and appreciate how this thought flow is going and how one idea is leading to another. So I'll upload this on this slide. You don't have to write it down or anything. All of it will be available. Okay. Hari Om. Online also. Hari Om.